All right, some changes are being made to the college football playoff selection committee, and it's unfortunate, but I feel like we need to talk about it. I don't really think this should be something that we have to pay attention to, but unfortunately we do. At the end of every season, this is the committee of 13 people who are handpicking the playoff teams. In the past, that's been 4 teams. Going forward, it's going to be 12. Now, there are some automatic qualifiers going forward. If the 5 highest ranked conference champions are going to automatically get in, but that still leaves 7 spots available to be voted in, basically. And the 13 members of the college football playoff committee, those are the people that are voting on the playoff teams every single year at the end of the year. Regardless of what you hear from butthurt fans at the end of every season, it's not ESPN sitting in a dark room somewhere just saying, well, we're ESPN, we're going to do that team and this team and that. Is not how it works. It's never worked that way. But we're going to go through some of these names here, but there are some new names coming into the playoff committee and there are some names leaving the playoff committee. Now, I do think it's worth knowing who's on the playoff committee, especially if you're somebody that finds yourself at the end of every season either defending the playoff teams or criticizing the playoff teams. Whichever side of that argument you're on, if you're making either case in that argument, it's worthwhile for you to know who's on this committee. You need to know who you're blaming. If you think the playoff committee screwed up the playoff selections, you need to know who it is that you're blaming for that. It's not a TV channel. ESPN's not controlling these people and telling them what to do. You're going to see when we go through these names, the idea that these people would just do what ESPN told them to do is insanity. There's an athletic director from NC State. He's going to not vote Florida State in, and he's going to vote Alabama in instead because ESPN told him to? No. NC State would make money if an ACC team made the playoffs. Why would he? It makes no sense. The Michigan athletic director, you're going to see this athletic directors and people from all across the country. It's not ESPN that's picking these playoff teams, and the argument starts to fall apart once you realize who's actually on this playoff committee. But let's start with who's new to the committee. Mike Riley. Some of you might remember him. He's been a coach at Oregon State for a long time. He was at Nebraska. He is now on the college football playoff committee. He is replacing Pat Chun. Now, Pat Chun was the athletic director at Washington State last year. He is taking a job as athletic director at Washington now. And of course, Washington is moving into the Big Ten. So Pat Chun was on the committee last year. He's being replaced. Mike Riley is coming in. There's some other new names as well, which means, of course, we're going to have some people leaving. Here's the other new members coming to the playoff committee, selection committee for 2024. Missouri head coach Gary Pinkel, former Missouri head coach Gary Pinkel. Who remembers him? He was the head coach at Missouri for a long time. I believe he was at Missouri when they were in the Big 12 and sort of guided Missouri into their SEC periods. I think he was the head coach at Missouri while they were in the Big 12 and while they were in the SEC. No longer a coach. He also coached at Toledo. He's in. The Baylor athletic director, Mark Rhodes. He's now on the 13-member college football playoff selection committee. And Virginia athletic director, Carla Williams, joins, who else? Arkansas athletic director, Hunter Yurachek. So those are all new names. Mike Riley, Gary Pinkel, Mac Rhodes, Carla Williams, Hunter Yurachek. Brand new onto the college football playoff selection committee for this coming year. People that represent schools across the country, from coast to coast, all different conferences, none of which work for ESPN. Who are they replacing? Well, they're replacing Boo Kerrigan. He was the is it the chairman they call? I think the committee chairman, Boo Corrigan. He was the athletic director at NC State last year and the committee chairman of the college football playoff selection committee. He is stepping down. And again, according to Florida State fans last year, and even going back, and look, I'm not here to pile on Florida State fans. This happens every year. Look, there's Georgia fans who think Georgia should have been in last year. Some of them blame ESPN too. Well, ESPN just hates Georgia. That's just kind of the thing now. Everybody thinks everybody hates their team. That's just kind of a thing. The reality is no one hates your team. I promise. ESPN doesn't hate your team. Fox doesn't hate your team. Kirk Herbstreit doesn't hate your team. Some random announcer that's doing the play-by-play for your game on a Friday night doesn't hate your team. No one hates your team. It's just the way it is. But anyway, Boo Corrigan out. Kentucky athletic director Mitch Barnhart out. Utah athletic director Mark Harlan out. Kansas State athletic director Gene Taylor out. Now, they're not out because they did anything wrong or they were somehow fired or anything like that. When these people join on to the college football playoff selection committee, it is for a specific number of years. And when that contract is up, generally, they leave the college football playoff selection committee. There has been a few examples over the years where people have renewed a contract or done a second contract, but generally people serve their time, their 2-3 years, whatever it is on the committee, and they move on. But all those people are out. NC State Athletic Director Boo Corrigan, Kentucky Athletic Director Mitch Barnhart, Utah Athletic Director Mark Harlan, Kansas State Athletic Director Gene Taylor. Hall of Fame former coach Joe Taylor, out, and former Notre Dame linebacker and tight end Rod West, out. Their terms have expired. They didn't do anything wrong. They weren't fired. They signed a contract for a certain number of years. That contract ended with the 2023 season. The College Football Playoff Selection Committee did extend the contract of former All-American Nebraska lineman Will Shields. So Will Shields was been on the selection committee for a period of time. His contract was up at the end of last year. They've given him another contract. Again, Nebraska, a Big Ten team. Michigan Athletic Director Ward Manuel is going to replace Boo Corrigan as the committee chair. So again, to the people who think that ESPN is somehow the Oz behind the curtain, the boogeyman under your bed, right? And is secretly controlling everything from a dark room somewhere like some sort of puppet master, okay? In order to believe that, then you also have to believe that last year, Boo Corrigan, the chairman of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, who's the athletic director of NC State, an ACC team, actively, willingly went along with what they were told to do by some random anonymous person at ESPN. We know you're in the ACC. We know you'll make money if Florida State gets in the playoffs. Don't vote for Florida State. Vote for this team instead because we're ESPN and we said so. In order to think ESPN's the one doing that, you have to think that Boo Corrigan, the athletic director of NC State, an ACC team, who stood to make money from Florida State in the playoff, went along with that. And he was in charge of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. Now, Ward Manuel, the athletic director at Michigan, you have to paint yourself into such a corner to believe. Do you really think that the athletic director at Michigan, with everything that's going on in college football right now, the sort of SEC versus Big Ten sort of collision course that we appear to be headed towards, with, Fox on one side and ESPN on the other, and these mega TV deals sort of going head to head for eyeballs. Do you really think that the athletic director in one of the most prominent schools in the other conference, the Big Ten, part of the other network, Fox, is going to be doing the bidding of ESPN at the end of every season when it comes time to pick college football playoff teams? Again, he was on the selection committee last year. He wasn't the chairman. Boo Corrigan, athletic director, NC State, was the chairman. Do you honestly believe that? That's what I would ask. Now, this is why I think that the overwhelming majority of people who make these comments at the end of every season that, well, ESPN just didn't want this team in and they wanted that team in. I really just think that people that say that really just think that it is ESPN that picks the playoff team. They can't tell you one person that's on the selection committee. I'm telling you who's on it. There's one person with an SEC tie on the selection committee. Last year it was the Kentucky athletic director. This year it's the Arkansas athletic director. That's it. Is it Arkansas? I don't want. Yeah, Arkansas athletic director Hunter Yurachek is replacing the Kentucky athletic director. So there's one representative from the SEC that's even a part of this entire process. Boo Corrigan, last year's guy in charge, ACC. This year, guy in charge, Ward Manuel, Big Ten. You have to be willfully ignorant to really believe that all of these people, 13 individuals representing the 10 different conferences in every corner, nook, and cranny of this country and all different schools. I mean, the athletic director of Navy is on this committee. You have to believe that all of those people, in secret, without it ever getting out, are secretly they're not really meeting 2 days a week to discuss rankings and vote and compare teams and watch games. No, they're not really doing that. That's all a lie. because they're just voting for whoever ESPN tells them to, even though they're the athletic director at Michigan or Utah or Navy or the former Nebraska coach or what. The amount of stupid that you have to fit in between your ears to actually believe that is mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. Michigan Athletic Director Ward Manuel will replace Boo Corrigan as the committee chair. There are several former coaches and players in the group, 7 sitting athletic directors representing the 7 conferences. 1 from each Power 4 league make up the majority. The other returning committee members are former Nevada coach Chris Alt. Again, some random coach from Nevada y'all think is just secretly in the pocket of ESPN. The athletic director from Navy, Chet Gladchuk. He's going to be on the selection committee again this year. According to the conspiracy theorists at the end of every season, he's just secretly doing whatever ESPN tells him to do. Former Wake Forest coach Jim Grove, Wake Forest in the ACC. Doesn't matter. No loyalty or ties there, just doing whatever ESPN tells him to do. Miami of Ohio athletic director David Saylor. Not a Power 5 coach, a Group of 5 team, a small school in the state of Ohio. Just doing what ESPN tells him to do, according to the conspiracy nerds. And a former sports writer, Kelly Whiteside. That's who's on the playoff selection committee. Not Kirk Herbstreit, not Josh Pate, not some random guy in a suit in Connecticut that works for ESPN. So just think about that the next time you get ready to type, well, ESPN just handpicks the teams and ESPN this and ESPN is not going to crawl out from under your bed and body snatch you. It's just not going to happen. These are the people picking the playoffs. You don't have to think they got it right. Hell, it's subjective. It's subjective. That's kind of the point of college football. It's always been subjective, meaning 2 people or 13 people can look at the same set of data and criteria over the course of a season and come to 2 different conclusions about which team is better than which. Because we've got 134 teams, we only play 12 regular season games. It is impossible for every team to play everybody. It can't happen. That's one of the reasons why the playoffs are expanding. I mean, I'm 45 years old. We used to have no playoff at all. We didn't even have a BCS title game. You didn't even get number 1 versus number 2 in a bowl game. You might have number 1 playing number 7 and number 2 playing number 5. And then a group of sports writers would sit around afterwards and vote on who they thought the best team was. Then we went to a BCS system where computers, or a mix of computers and a mix of sports writers, were picking who they thought the 2 best teams were. And those 2 teams were placed in a national championship game. People cried and complained. Then we went to a 4-team playoff. 13-member selection committee. Not ESPN, not a boogeyman, not Kirk Herbstreit. A 13-member selection committee that is representative of every conference in the country. There's only one person on it with any ties at all to the SEC. The person in charge of the selection committee last year was an ACC athletic director. The person in charge this year is a Big Ten athletic director. And people are crying. That 4 is not enough. They picked the wrong teams. We need more teams. All right. So we expand to 12. What do people do? They cry. We don't need 12 playoff teams. A joke. 12 too many. Crying is a hobby for way too many people. It just is. There are certain people that are going to cry no matter what they do. Like, there could literally only be 2 choices. There are people who would cry no matter which choice was made. They've just, it's so ingrained in them. It's become such a part of their personality, crying, that it's just like it's almost a reflex at this point, you know? People cried about the BCS 2 teams. It's not fair. The computers have too much weight. What if the 3rd team's better than the 2nd team? People were crying. So then we went to a 4-team playoff. Oh, we don't need 4 teams. This is ridiculous. There aren't 4 teams that can win it. And then at the same time going, well, they picked the wrong 4. The 5th team is better than the 4th team. Or I think the 5th team could beat the 3rd team. So they expand now to 12, and the same thing. 12's too many. This is ridiculous. Ruining college football. Don't need 12 playoff teams. Those same people at the end of the season are going, they picked the wrong 4 teams. Wrong 4. The 5th is better. 5th should have been 4. And guess what? Now that we have a 12-team playoff, the people that have been crying before, they're still going to be crying. They're going to cry that the 13th team is better than the 12th team. They're going to cry that some random 16th ranked team is better than whatever group of 5 team gets in. If the SEC gets 4 teams in and the Big Ten gets 3, people are going to say, see, ESPN. They don't know what they're talking about. Anyway, there's the selection committee for 2024. So when you cry on the internet next December, you know which direction to point your tears. Have a good morning.